Hi guys, welcome back to 100 Days Machine Learning Crash Course. This is part 2 out of 4 parts that we have in machine learning. Today we want to talk a little about Pandas package, which is very useful package for working with data. And yeah, let's do this. Okay, Pandas is a very powerful framework to work with data. You can think of that like a powerful Excel that you could manipulate data or store them, or lots of other operations that we want to see. Okay, if you search Pandas, you could see the website for that and access the documentation and actually the whole documentation. But in this session and in the next session, we just want to get some insights about really useful methods, and that they are common they are commonly used in data science and this kind of works. Okay. First, you should install Pandas. For installing Pandas, you just need to install that with pip. As you know, if you want to install that for Python 3, you need to add 3 in here. But if you use Python 2, you don't need that 3. So in here, I'm using Python 3, so I use pip3 install Pandas. Okay. After installation, now I want to work in a Jupyter notebook. Okay, here I just create a Python file in here. Okay, for working with Pandas, you need to import that, and it is commonly imported as PD because it is a very short version of Pandas and it is commonly used. Actually, you could use anything else, but PD is commonly used by people. Okay, and NumPy as NP. Okay. The first thing that we want to know about that in Pandas is data series. Actually, data series in Pandas is like NumPy array in Python. Let's see an example from that. Hope you will get that very soon. Okay, let's say we have some data. The data is like stored in a dictionary. Fake data set is A is 1, B 2, C 3, and D 4. Okay, now if we call the data series ds, we should use series pd.series and we could pass the dictionary to this function. Okay, now we could print ds in here. As you could see, it is like a NumPy array for storing data, but it could actually can be indexed by labels. As you could as actually you know that in NumPy, when you work with NumPy, you should index by integers. Okay, but in here in series, you could actually index the data by labels. Okay, So this is one way for creating series. Another way is to just pass your data. Let's say it is 1, 2, 3, and 4, or let's use another data. Okay, and the labels are A, B, C, and D. Okay, you could pass the data as, actually this data is input argument of series, and we want to, the data is equal to data, and the index is labels. Okay, now if we print ds2 in here, as you could see, we have a series in here. Okay, and we could do lots of operations on series. For example, we could add two series based on the labels. So as you could see in here, the values are added based on the index. So the values of A, which is 121, summed with 1 in here, because it is A and this is A, and so on. Okay, so this is actually series in Pandas, and you could access the data by as I mentioned, with instead of index, you could actually access them by labels and also by index. Okay, so it is pretty straightforward to define series and work with that. And if we don't pass any labels to that, now if we print, as you could see here, Pandas automatically assigned index by numbers, by integers from 0 to the data. Okay, so if you just pass a list as a data to series method, Pandas automatically assign index to that data. Okay, so this is about series, but actually series in Pandas, we don't work a lot with series. Actually, we will work and use a lot data frames in Pandas. So, okay, next we want to talk about Pandas data frames, which are very important, and they are more common than Pandas series in Python for who works in machine learning area. Okay, now we want to talk about data frames. Data frames are the most important part of Pandas. They are actually a bunch of series objects. So if we have a bunch of series objects, they could store in a data frame. Okay, let's see how we could create a data frame and getting familiar with different methods that we could use in data frames. Okay. First, let's generate some random data. We use Gaussian distribution, and we create, let's say, 8 rows and 4 columns data. So if we print random data, we will see that we have something like this. It is a NumPy array. So, okay, now for creating a data frame, we could call data frame, and now we pass the data, which is a random data, and for the rows of, as you could see here, we have a 2D matrix. So we need some index, which could be A, B, and C, D, E, F, G. Oops. And H. And we have some columns, and we want to give some names to that column, so we could give X, Y, Z, and V. Okay. Now, if we print, let's do this in here. If we print the data frame, as you could see now, we have a data frame in here. So, and we have X and A in here. So A, B, C, D, and so on are the index of this data frame, and X, Y, Z, and V are the column names in this matrix or in this data frame. So, okay, the first thing which we probably want to be able to do is select one column. Okay, for selecting a column, you just need to use the name of that column. So in here, for example, we select this column. Okay, and as you could see here, this is actually a pandas data frame, a pandas series. If we print the type of this column, as you could see here, it is pandas series. So a data frame is a bunch of series in pandas. Okay, so this is how you could select a column with that name in data frame. If you want to select multiple columns, you could pass the names of them as a list. So you pass a list in here. Let's say we want X and V. Okay, now as you could see in here, we have X and V columns in here. Okay. Okay, now let's say you want to create a new column. Okay, you could just pass the name of that in here. Let's say it is N, and it is equal to the sum of X column and V column. Okay, so now you see that in here we add a new column in here. Okay, as simple as that. Okay, now if you want to remove a column, you could use drop method. Okay, you use the name of the column that you want to drop. Let's say we want to drop Z column, and you should pass the axis. The rows have actually 0 axis, and the axis for the columns is 1. So it is 1 and it is 0. Okay. Now, as you could see in here, we dropped this column. If now I print data frame, as you could see here, Z still is in there. So because we didn't use in place in here. In lots of methods in Pandas, we could use in place methods. So if you use in place equal to true, then perform this operation. And now if I print the data frame, I could see that the Z column is removed. So if you use in place is equal to true, the data frame itself will be changed. But if you don't use in place or set it equal to false, which is the default mode for in place, then the data frame itself will not be changed. Okay. Or if you want to remove a row from here, you could use the name of that. Let's say it is E, but in here you should pass axis 0 because it is related to rows. So if you want to manipulate rows, it is 0, and if you want to manipulate columns, it is axis 1. Okay. Now, as you could see, we dropped row E in here, but if you want, as I mentioned, if you just print df itself, because we didn't use in place is equal to true, so the df is not changed. So in here now we removed the E row, but actually we don't want to change the actual data frame now, so we don't use in place in here. Okay. Now, if you want to select a row from data frame, you should use lock method. Okay. Now, let's say it is we want the B. Okay, as you could see in here, now we have the columns related to this row in here. If you want to have if you want to select multi-rows, you could just pass them as, let's say, B and D in here. Sorry. Okay, you should just pass them as list in here. Okay, so yeah, that's it. Now let's say you want to select the rows based on the index of labels. So let's say this is C and the index of this label is 2 because it is 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on, and we want to select index 2 from the rows. In this case, that you know the integer index of the label, you could use ilock 2. So in here you could see that this row is printed in here. Now let's say you want to select a subset of the columns and rows in here. let's say we want to select this one, this one, this one, and this data. So we want to have B and C in here and Y and Z from here. Okay, for this you could use log and pass two lists in here. Okay, the first is related to the name of rows, which is B and C, and this is related to the columns, which is Y and Z. But because we actually removed Y from Dataframe, okay, we don't have that. Okay, let's say it is Y and V. As you could see here, if you don't have that column, Pandas put nan, or not a number, instead of the values. Okay, so okay, now in here you could see that we selected a subset of the rows and columns from the data frame. Okay, now it is time to introduce very important functionalities for selecting rows and columns and subset of data frame in Pandas, which is conditional selection. Let's say you want to select just the data that has the value greater than 0. For this, actually, you could use conditional selection. If you print df is greater than 0, then you will get a Boolean data frame. Okay, so it is false true for each element. You could see that it is because it is greater, it is less than 0. So for this, it is false, and so on. Okay, so you could pass just this Boolean data frame to your data frame like this. So we need to select the data frame of data frame is greater than 0. So now in here you could see that we get this column because for this value it is greater than 0, and for the values that are not greater than 0, we got nan in here. Okay, so if we just have a positive value in a row or column, all that column is selected. So just note that for example in here we know that it is greater than 0, so Pandas select this column. But because these values are not greater than 0 and they are negative, so Pandas put nan instead of them. Okay, and this is true for other columns also. In fact, Pandas just keep positive values, and because the resulted data frame is not have a 2D, a clean 2D shape, then the Pandas put nan values to form a clean matrix form data frame. Okay. Now let's say we want to select data or columns in which values of column, let's say y is greater than 0. Now you will see that you just have this one the data related to this one, this one, this one, and this one. Okay, so we don't have D because in D row we have negative Y values and so on for C, B, and yeah, for C, B, and D we don't have positive value for Y, so they are removed from here or not selected. Okay, now let's say you want to select column Y from here. You could actually use write that in just one line. So if you write this, you get this. And let's say we want to select the Y column, so I just enter Y in here. Okay, so I just get this column. It maybe seems a little complicated to read, but as you continue and progress in Pandas and work with Pandas, you will get that it is not that complicated, and it is actually easy. But at first, if it is very hard for you, you could do that in two steps. Okay, so first write this, and then let's say we could put that in res, and then we could select the Y column from the resulted selection. Okay, and also if you want to select two columns, we know that how to do that. Okay, so you just need to pass a list in here. Okay, so let's say we want Y and V. Okay, that's it. Okay, sometimes you want to use multiple conditions. Okay, and so let's say, for example, we want to select data and in which Y columns is greater than 0 and also V column is greater than 0. Okay, for putting and in here, you should use ampersand in here, which is probably Shift 7 for the normal keyboards. Okay, so this means that we want to have both of these conditions. But if you want to just have one condition, or you could use pipe sign in here, but now we just want to use and condition. Okay, please don't use this, and this is for Python, not for Pandas. So in here you should use ampersand in here. Okay, now you will see that we selected the columns that we are looking for. Okay. Another thing which we want to talk about that is how to reset index or set new index for the data frame. If you use reset index, you will see that you get integer values as index in here, and it adds actually the labels, the rows as the index in here, but for selection you could use these integer values. Now let's say we want to create a new column in here. So we want to, now let's say it is in place because we want to change our data frame. Now let's say we have new column, or let's say we name that F or Q is equal to A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, A7, and A8. Okay, now if we print df, we have a new column. Now let's say we want to set these columns as index of this data frame. We could use set index and pass the column name that we want to use as the index in here. Okay, that's it. As you can see in here, we just changed the row's name in here. If you print df, you just please note that it is not changed. If you want to change the data frame, you should use in place true in here. Okay. Now, okay, it is actually for this lesson. I think it is enough. Just for recap, very quick recap. Maybe it is better to review the methods. Okay, so for creating data frame, you need to pass index, actually obviously first your data and then your index, which is actually the row's name, and the column names. Okay, as you could see in here. For selecting columns, you could use a list of column names in here. So if I want to select X and Y, I put them in a list and pass them to data frame to select those columns. For creating new column, I could just use the name of the new column, and then in here we could use a series or list in here. So dfx is actually one column of data frame, which is a series, and this is actually a series, so we added two series together and put them in new column. For drop a column, you just pass, you need to use drop method, then you pass the column name that you want to drop, and you should pass axis equal to 1 to this method, which means that you want to work with columns. And if you want to change your data frame by performing this line, you just need to use in place is equal to true in here. Otherwise, after performing this line, your actual data frame is not changed. And for removing a row, you could just use the name of that row, and you should use axis equal to 0, which means that you want to work with rows. If you want to select rows, you should use log instead of this notation that we when we wanted to select columns, we just used this notation. But if you want to select data based on index names, in here you should use log method and pass your name in here. Or if you want to select multiple rows or multiple indices, you just need to put them in a list and pass them to the log. If you want to select data based on the index of labels, you just need to pass the integer values to ilog. You should use ilog in here instead of log. Okay. And if you want to select a subset of rows and columns in a data frame, you just need to pass the row names and column names in a list. Okay, and use log in here. After that, we learned about conditional selection, that when you want to use conditional selection, you just need to write your condition and pass that to your data frame. If you want to put just a condition on one column, you just do that. And if you want to select multiple conditions, then you need to write your AND or operation that you want to use. If you want to use AND, you need to use ampersand. And if you want to use OR, you just need to use pipe operation in here. Okay, then that's it. Your subset will be selected. If you want to change your index of your data frame and label names, or if you want to reset the index and set them as integer values, you could use reset index method. And if you want to create new index for your data frame, you could use set index method in here. Okay, yeah, that's it. I hope that you learn how to work with data in Pandas. It is very important for someone who works with data and actually works in machine learning area to know how to use Pandas. Yeah, I hope to see you in the next session. And in the next session, we will introduce to more advanced function in Pandas that you could use to manipulate data and or saving data or reading data from files. And hope to see you in the next session. Bye.